Welcome to Life and Story. My name is Alisa Blackwood. I spoke with Janet Kilde in December 2021 in her daughter Debbie's colorful parlor. Janet and John drove to St. Paul from their home in Fergus Falls for our interview, which meant they also got to enjoy some snuggles with their grandkids. During Janet's interview, she takes the time to share about her faith journey, beginning with childhood, into her adult years as a pastor's wife. She details pivotal moments that strengthened her faith, talks about why hospitality is important to her, and reminisces about raising her children. Relax, settle in, and enjoy Janet's stories.
I am Janet Ruth Eklund Kilde, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York on October 23rd, 1947, to Ruth and Palmer Eklund. And had a good growing up life, but I want to concentrate mainly on my faith story for the beginning of this, and then if Alisa has other questions, we'll get to those later. But so I grew up in Brooklyn, went to school in kindergarten, and the earliest memory I have of God was coming down. We lived in, one of those brown houses in Brooklyn, and my dad was sitting there reading his Bible, but he wasn't saying any words. And so I didn't quite understand that. But I remember asking him, where did God come from? And I remember him just saying, Janet, some things you just have to know by faith, or you just have to accept by faith. And that was good. That was fine. So we carried on. From Brooklyn, we moved to Canton, South Dakota for 2-3 years because my dad had just gotten his teaching and coaching degree, and that's where he had started to work. And those years were good. Yep, I have a story from 3rd grade, but I won't tell it right now because I just told Solveig.
But we could maybe get back to that story.
Yes.
It's a good story.
Get back to that story because it really was I'll tell it now because it was a key part of my life. I learned a major lesson in 3rd grade. We lived in this small town, Baltic, South Dakota, 200 people. And, I had come from Brooklyn, but I didn't think anything of it. But we had dresses that were a little more fancy than what they were used to there. And so the girls, I've always been a nice kid, but I think they were jealous because I had kind of modern clothes. So they started calling me buck teeth, which I did have buck teeth. And I didn't get braces until 7th grade. But I had no idea I had buck teeth at the time, 3rd grade. And so they made fun of me. And I'd go home from school and cry. Well, I think it must have been a tough year for my dad coaching, too, because we only stayed there 1 year. And then we moved back to New Jersey. But the major lesson, I didn't think about this until, a few years ago when I was leading a Bible study. I learned a major lesson then, not to make fun of people. And to always be nice or to go sit with the kid that was sitting alone in the lunchroom. And as a result, I always had friends. I was homecoming queen in high school and homecoming queen in college. And I was just a normal kid, but I think I must have just been nice. So anyway, that was a major lesson. But then we'll skip to New Jersey. And 6th grade was a really big time for me in my faith journey. I wasn't reading the Bible. It was a nice Lutheran home. And we prayed for meals, but we didn't really pray for anything else. And I was in 6th grade. And I was the new kid. So at first, the other girls, didn't like me. And I think it was because I didn't swear or I wasn't gossiping. So I remember going home from school that day and just flipping open my Bible, which I never read. But this verse that popped out has come to be like my life verse. Hebrews 13:5-6. Keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never fail you or forsake you. What can man do to me? And later in life, it's the part about, I will never fail you or forsake you. But in 6th grade, the part that really spoke to me was, what can man do to me? And I thought, yeah, what can these girls do to me? Well, eventually, that got fine. And they did like me, although that was the first and only time I ever lost an election. And Holly Cable from England won the secretary position for the class. Anyway, but those were okay years. And I also had another great moment. We went to a Lutheran church, and I, was sitting in church. And one Sunday, I heard actually what the preacher was saying. He was talking about the 10 Commandments. And he said, if you've broken one commandment, it's as bad as if you've broken them all. And I thought, oh, I don't honor my father and mother all the time. And there was that time that I stole graham crackers from the kindergartners, and I knew I had broken commandments. So I cried and cried, but I never told anybody. And if I had, my mom would have reassured me that God had forgiven my sin, but I didn't. But that was a meaningful time then too. Then we skipped to high school. I went to Augustana Academy, which was a Lutheran high school in South Dakota, the place where my dad used to coach those couple of years. And I had a lot of friends. I was good. And but then one day, a speaker came to chapel, and he asked the question. He said, raise your hand if you know you're going to heaven. And there were about 200 students there. Not one of us raised our hand. Not one. I didn't know I was going to heaven. I didn't know you could know that. And he shared this verse, which I did jot down. Okay. He shared from 1 John 5, verses 12 and 13. If you believe in the name of the Son of God, you may know that you have eternal life. Simple as that. And I thought, oh, that was good news. I knew I was a sinner. That was clear from 6th grade on. And I knew I believed in God. But now I could know and didn't have to worry. It wasn't based on how many good things I did or how many presents I gave to people. It was just knowing that I needed a savior. So that was really big for me. The other big thing my senior year was at our senior class retreat. And since it was a Lutheran high school, we had this retreat. And one of the guys' moms, Mrs. Schultz, was the chaperone for the girls. And one night she said she had a little devotional like Solveig has with her Hannah books. And she said, does anybody want to know God better? Well, there were probably about 25 girls there. And it was me and 2 other girls that wanted to know God better. And so she laid her hands on our head and prayed for us to be filled with the Holy Spirit. Well, we didn't even really know what that was. But the next morning, all we could do was talk about Jesus. Well, all it did was cause trouble with the rest of the kids. So, I was glad it was graduation and we left. And I didn't do much, thinking about the Holy Spirit or God for, 3-4 years in college. And then especially in college, one of the teachers explained away the miracles. You couldn't believe all the Bible. So it wasn't until senior year, second semester, that I started thinking about that. And then I didn't read the Bible. But yet I was a good kid. I got along with everybody. But anyway, so then I taught in Minneapolis a year, in Anoka. I was a physical education major and taught there a year. And then I went back to New Jersey. And it was during the time in New Jersey that 1972, when the Jesus movement was happening all across the United States. Not in the Midwest yet, I don't think. They were a little slower. But anyway, And there a speaker came, and I thought, okay, God, if you're real, I want you to work in my life. And he did. And I had such a hunger to read the Bible. I'd get up at 4 a.m. before I taught school to read the word. My students were all becoming Christians, and it was an exciting time. It also was a time I started dating my husband, who was a pastor, which was so cool. I could ask him all my questions.
And how old were you then?
I was like 23 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we did get married, and, he didn't poo-poo, my story at all, because there were some extra things with the Holy Spirit there that, I don't want to get into now. But anyway, John just encouraged me and was excited with me. And so we got married August 13th, 1972, and lived a year in Briarcliff Manor, New York, which are very close to where Hillary now lives. And, but I had to teach college physical education. I was offered a position at this Christian school, not my love. I had just finished getting my master's in school counseling, which is what I really wanted to do. So it was a hard year. Our first year.
Also, when you coached field hockey.
I coached.
Field hockey.
Yeah.
Field hockey.
We played small King's College, played UConn, University of Connecticut, in field hockey. Big UConn. It was like Goliath and David and Goliath. And I didn't play field hockey in college, but I was smart enough that the center fielder in field hockey went to our church. And she would kind of give me little suggestions here and there without making it obvious to everybody else. And I was smart enough to listen to her. We had an undefeated season. It was unbelievable. It was just God. Yeah.
So you just jumped in,
yeah,
learned the sport.
I'd had a course in it in college.
Okay.
But that was the extent of it.
How fun.
Well, it wasn't at the time. That was the most stressful year. We were first married. I taught at college. I never had any time. My husband thought, oh, here, my wife can do anything, and I couldn't. So I was very happy.
But you did.
I did, yes. Mm-hmm. But I was very happy when we moved to Fergus Falls, Minnesota the next year, when John, because I also moved into his bachelor apartment, which he wanted nothing moved. He still is that way today, but I do it anyway. He's come to accept that I do need change. And we moved to Fergus, got a little house, which was so fun. So I wasn't moving into his bachelor. We started fresh, And then I was offered a counseling position a girls' dean position at Hillcrest Lutheran Academy, which is where all 4 of our kids wound up going.
You might need to explain what a dean is. Because
it was a live-in. The students, many of the students, a residential, school.
Okay. Got it.
And that was good. But my real love was in counseling. Mm-hmm. But I was there a while. And during my 3rd year, I was pregnant with our oldest daughter, Becky. She was born in 1976. So then I didn't go back to being a dean, but I still taught their physical education and coached basketball, which was also horrible. What
was horrible about it?
I'd coached volleyball first, and that went pretty well for me. But in volleyball, the scores might change very quickly, so I was kind of used to that. So there was this one game in basketball. We had a lead, 50-point lead, and the principal sent a note to me saying, quit the press, because I was still having the guards press when they took the ball in. That was ridiculous. We had 50 points, but I was thinking volleyball changes fast. So I was really glad that I only coached 1 year.
Okay.
But by that time, too, I think I had Christy was born in 78, Debbie was born in 80, and Johnny in 82. So by the time I had Debbie, I was out of school altogether. And I didn't work until Johnny was in kindergarten. So I was home with these adorable little girls that were great singers, and they sang trios with matching dresses, and they really were cute. They really were, and sweet. And so those were their growing up years. And then, okay, so I talked about high school, I talked about college. They're growing up. They all went to Hillcrest, which was fun. We got a big discount because my husband at that time was teaching in the seminary at Lutheran Brethren schools. He taught Greek and homiletics and Bible. And so it was just kind of a nice life. I did go a little crazy with the curl. The only way I say I made it through those early years was a woman's Bible study. And I really had never been in a woman's Bible study at all. Here I was, this pastor's wife with this hunger for the word, but I didn't really know a lot until, like 1975, maybe. Anyway, so that was that. Okay, so then I taught at Hillcrest. I was, there. And then I got a position at Battle Lake Public School as a teacher. And I loved it as a school counselor. I loved it. I got paid a whole lot more. And I worked kindergarten through 12th grade. So I really had the gamut. But it was a great job.
What was it that you loved about it?
In the elementary, I would go into the classes with lessons on, bullying and all the character education. Mm-hmm. But then as they got older, I was still there and working with the junior, senior high school. So they knew me. And so they weren't afraid. It wasn't a bad thing to go to the counselor's office. So that was fun. And there were some kids in high school that I really believe. I did get counselor of the, must have just been in Otter Tail County. I don't know, whatever. But I did get an honor for counseling because one of the girls had written how I had saved her life. Mm. And that was kind of cool. Leslie. Yeah. Anyway, that was fun. So I taught there.
Can I ask you a little bit more about that real quick before you move on?
Yeah. Okay.
Someone saying you saved her life is significant.
Yeah.
And you don't have to share her story if you don't want to, but I would love to hear a little bit more about.
Well, it turned out that her father was abusive to her. And her mother knew it, but didn't do anything about it. Mm. And so I was able, with her permission, to contact her mother and let her know what was happening with her daughter and how important that was. Mm-hmm. And so I had the contact with the parents. And so that was cool. She had written a letter. That's how I got that honor. We went to Cragen's Resort and it was all paid for. It was kind of special. Aww. Yeah. Okay. So now my kids they were very active in high school and choir, music. My husband will tell you more about the strain of music in our family, but they were all very musical. And then our son, I made him. He was in band as a 7th grader, hated it. And I made a deal. I said, you can quit band if you're then you will have to be in choir in high school. And he went for it, and it was a good thing. But he was mainly a sportsman. The girls were kind of a little dabbling in volleyball and cheerleading. Yeah, and just fun. Debbie was always the life of the party. She was just fun. Her sisters didn't always like that because, their friends liked Debbie. Anyway, so it was a little challenging, but Johnny was the athlete, and he started as a freshman and playing basketball and really was good. Had 1,000 points by the time he was a senior, went to state. In football, they got second in the state in football and second in the state in basketball. From there, okay, the girls were in college by this point. Debbie went 2 years to the CC and then transferred to Bethel. And Becky went to the CC 1 year, transferred to Morehead State. She was in social work. Debbie was in musical theater. And Christy went to the U and transferred to Bethel, and she was in education. Interesting. But there were some hard times there that we went through when our kids were more of adults. And do I tell your story, Debbie, or not?
You can tell whatever story you want. So wait.
Okay. So Debbie had struggling with an eating disorder, and that was hard. But by the grace of God, she learned how to manage it. Let's put it that way. And I think she still does to this day. But that was a kind of scary time. And then our son played football at Bethel and had a great career there too. Those were fun times. But after college, he didn't really know what he wanted to do. And as a guidance counselor, Mom says, well, what are you good at and what do you like? That's what you should pursue. And he didn't really know, but he did go to Bethel and get a degree in physical education. Well, after college, he wanted to just have a few drinks with the boys. During sports, he really didn't. Well, we did not realize that that he was becoming an alcoholic. And you don't know that until you've crossed the line.
Right. Yeah.
And my dad, I kept that secret for years, but he was an alcoholic. Many of my husband's relatives were alcoholic. So there is a gene component there. And we had 10 years that were horrible. They were really hard. During that time, John was pastoring. He had retired from the seminary, go figure, and then took a half-time position in Jamestown, North Dakota as a pastor. And we thought we'd be there 2-3 years. Well, it turned out we were there almost 11. And they were wonderful years. They were so supportive. And I remember one of the first Sunday school classes I was at, it was just a women's one. And that's when Johnny he had been teaching at a Christian school in Fargo, wasn't showing up to class. And that's when we first recognized that he had a major problem. And I shared that. And I remember one of the ladies in the class said, now, what was his name again? And she wrote it down. I thought, these women take prayer seriously. Well, that prayer for him to be set free was not answered for 10, 11 years. But the last time he was in jail for DWIs mainly, he didn't do bad other stuff. But he already had a daughter at that point, Willow, and another one on the way. And he was in jail, and he just thought, what am I doing with my life? And yielded to God. And I tell you, he is such a blessing to us. And his now wife, Anna, also, she came from a horrible, horrible background. And she was a user as well. And it was probably about a year and a half ago that she yielded. And they are beautiful. They really are. They have these lovely little girls that they just cherish. Okay.
Let me ask you a little bit more.
Yeah.
So during those hard times when your children were struggling, it sounds like you leaned on your community for support for you.
Yeah.
How else did you make it through that time?
God. I wrote something. I have a little folder at home called Jan's Writings. And I would pour out my heart to God and one of the last things I wrote was I was being assured that it would end, that John would come through it. it's really kind of a touching piece. I almost brought it with. But anyway, just my faith. And I should tell you why I had such good faith, too, because so God was present all the way through, but there were some dramatic answered prayers that, not everything I've prayed for comes through. Like I've had back issues. I was a pom-pom girl in college, athletic,
Does that mean cheerleader, pom-pom girl? Or is that different?
More of a kick line.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A dance.
Oh, fun. I hope you have pictures of that to share.
Yeah. And, but, I don't know, 6 years ago, I started having hip issues, and that led to back issues. And so now it's painful to walk.
Oh,
I use a walker, and I can, but I have to think a little bit. I don't just willy-nilly go out and do stuff. So God just said no to that prayer. And he did that to Paul in the Bible, too. 3 times he prayed for this thorn to be removed. But I want to tell you about the couple times that he really did. When the girls were little, and John, at that time, he was teaching both at the seminary and pastoring our local church, which was big. But they were little, and he would go out for lunch every day with different people. And there was a promotion in Fergus Falls to eat out at 10 different restaurants and spend $5. So you see how long ago that was. Debbie was 2. They were 2, 4, and 6. So the last restaurant we went as a family, and I was telling them about this contest. First place was a week in Hawaii. Second place was a week at a resort in Minnesota. No, Disneyland. And third place was a week at a resort in Minnesota. So they were little, and I was pregnant with Johnny. And they were just saying, oh, win Disneyland. At the time, we were in a smaller home, which later we added on to. The 3 girls were in one room, bunks and a bed. And they wouldn't go to sleep. They were so excited. Win Disney World, didn't win Disney. And you teach them you can pray about anything, which is something that I did not realize growing up. We prayed formally, but I didn't realize you could pray about anything, anytime. And so I said, well, we'll just ask God about it if we win either the trip to Hawaii or the trip to Disney World or the resort. Well, they quieted down, went right to sleep. I can clearly remember just walking out into our dining room thinking, what did you just do? I'd never prayed about anything big like that before. Well, it was a month later. And in the meantime, people at church were joking with us. Oh, we're going to win it. And I said, nope, we're going to win it. Well, the one lady said, Janet, if you do win the trip, I'll take care of your kids. Well, guess what? We won the trip. And she stayed far away from us.
That's not fair.
It was a riot, yeah. But my parents were able to I waited until 3 of them were in school. Were you in kindergarten? Kindergarten, second? No, I don't think you were in school yet. It was Christy in kindergarten, Becky in 2nd grade, and then Debbie was like 1 and Johnny a baby. And anyway, it worked. And that was just, such a boost to my faith. I've prayed about a lot of things since. And sometimes God says yes, and sometimes he says no. Or wait, like in the case of Johnny. But there was one other biggie, too. And that was the house we presently live in. We'd been living in this house that we had added on to right by the hospital, which was perfect because my mom was in and out of the hospital a lot. But then John accepted this position in Jamestown, and we lived on a busy street, which you really needed to keep the sidewalks clean and all that. But, we hadn't come to winter yet. So in the fall, the hospital they had been buying up houses in our area. And we thought, I wonder if they'll ever want to buy ours. Well, they did. They made an offer. They were going to tear it down and build parking lot. Well, guess what? Our house is still standing there to this day. They never tore it down. But they paid us well above what it was worth. And a friend of ours who's a realtor had this not duplex. Anyway, it's 1,600 feet on each floor. And they take care of all the ground, the townhome. Yes. And they take care of all the outside stuff, which when we moved to Jamestown, that was just perfect because we were in Jamestown. Oh, we usually leave about Saturday, get there about Saturday supper, and then come home Tuesday night. And we had a very modest apartment in Jamestown, no security, no elevator. And so it was good. We left when we did because then all my back problems started after that. But anyway, that was just something you don't even pray about. It was just a gift from God. We made $3,000. So, and we still love our area and our home and stuff. So those are a couple of the biggies. But God has just been faithful all the way through. And I was engaged in college. Ooh, that would have been a disaster. And I didn't have the courage to break it off. But thankfully, my fiance did. And that would have been horrible. So God really gave me a wonderful husband and children. And now we have 9 grandchildren. And we are just blessed. We are thankful. But like I said, not without troubles. The Christian life doesn't say you'll be trouble-free, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world and I am with you always. So that's kind of my key verse. Okay, that's enough for me. What else do you want to ask me?
That was great. Okay, thank you. You want to talk more about your career, it sounds like.
Well, I was just going to tell you about when we moved to Jamestown. I had a license in North Dakota for a school counselor. Well, lo and behold, they needed a school counselor half an hour from Jamestown for 20 hours a month. So we were there Saturday night, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So Mondays, I would get there about noon and the little kids would just run to you. I mean, it was just a small school. I couldn't believe it. But I was there from noon to about 3:30 and I was able to be a school counselor again. It was really fun. Okay, that's all.
Being a pastor's wife, because you haven't really touched on that at all.
No.
And I know that being a pastor's wife, I assume, is a very all-encompassing kind of role, right? It's really being immersed in the community. So I would love to hear more about what did that look like every day on the weekend with your family life?
Well, when John was pastor in Briarcliff, we were only there 1 year and I was so glad. I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable in the church there and stuff. But then we were in Fergus Falls, and he mainly taught at the seminary 10 years that first time. But then he was pastor at Bethel for another 10. And that's when our kids were little. And it was a big enough church that they didn't have these concepts of what a pastor's wife should or shouldn't do. I'll tell you one story from Briarcliff, though. That was a smaller church, maybe a couple hundred, but they didn't have a lot of extra staff. John was secretary, janitor, whatever. And the people there hounded us. They wanted John and me to sing a duet. Well, so finally we gave in and did it on a Sunday night. In those days, there were Sunday night services. They never asked us again. We did it, and okay. John has a wonderful voice. I can sing. I mean, I sing on tune, but I don't have a wonderful voice, But anyway,
That's half the battle, singing on tune. That counts for something.
Well, that was a funny story from Briarcliff. Yeah. But see, some of the ladies there, he had been a bachelor pastor for them for 5 years. And all of a sudden, I'm on the picture. And he had a reputation of dating girls a long time and nothing happened. So when we started dating, I didn't go up to, I lived in New Jersey, an hour away. So I didn't go up there much. So a lot of people didn't even know I existed. And, but I said to him, after, a year and a half or so, and he was old, he's 11 years older. So, I thought he's not getting any younger. And I just really had to ask him to, fish or cut bait because I'm still young. I'm 24. And so that dating story, we decided, okay, we aren't going to see each other for a week between Christmas and New Year's. Okay. And I'm a little stubborn and independent in a way. And okay, he did not call me on New Year's Eve. And I figured, even though we had this arrangement, I thought if he loved me, he would call me on New Year's Eve. So I cried and cried until finally I realized, you know what, Janet, if this isn't of God, then it's not a good thing. So just relax. We were going to meet that Monday night then for dinner. And on the way over, he still didn't know if he was going to propose or not. Mm. And he had kind of a real God moment. I think the radio was on, but he, in his mind, heard this voice. And so he's telling me about it. And he said, and do you know what it was I heard? Revelation 3:8, maybe? I think that's the verse. And behold, I have set before you an open door. And he said, well, I knew what that meant. God was opening the door for me to be part of his life. And then he said, do you know what the full chapter of Revelation says in some of the older Bibles? The Revelation to John. And so it was just kind of, and I'm a little bit more feely, and he is straight Bible, So we make a good match, I think, in a way, because I've gotten better and he's gotten a little more, following the Spirit. So that was that. What else were we talking about?
Let's go back to your childhood a little bit, because you did mention, your faith journey started.
We moved
early.
So many different schools. I was in Brooklyn, New York for kindergarten, Canton, South Dakota for first and second, Baltic. That's where that third grade incident was in third grade. Then we moved back to New Jersey. But in New Jersey, fourth and fifth grade were in Waldwick. Sixth grade was in Mahwah, and that's where I lived until, I got married. But I went to Augustana Academy where my father had taught when we were little kids, and it was I think I could be myself there. I had made varsity cheerleading as a sophomore, and a bunch of us would just go to the lake every day. We didn't work. We were ninth graders. And I realized that they were talking about parties they had been to, and I hadn't been invited to them. And yet I was liked. In junior high, too. I look back on this and I think, what in the world? I had gotten voted Personality Plus and Best All Around. And I just think of myself as like a little wallflower, kind of. But anyway, I wasn't getting invited to those parties. And so then I thought, well, yeah, but you wouldn't have gone anyway. They were all drinking makeout parties. And so then that's when I asked my parents if I could go to Augustana Academy because my sister had gone. And I flowered there. I really was able to just be myself and, around others that were godly and nice. Yeah. So, but otherwise, my grade school years, I don't remember.
Well, you mentioned your father reading the Bible and seeing him read the Bible. What about something as simple as daily meals? Did you say a prayer before dinner?
Yeah, that was about the only time we prayed. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what the prayer was? Was it the same or was it different every day?
Yeah. God is great and God is good, and we thank him for our food. Sometimes when we'd be at my grandparents in Brooklyn, they'd throw in the Norwegian. Yes, and Gavita Bor, but I really never
Can you say that again?
I don't know the whole thing.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm gebeten bor. Spisa dricka på dig or gutelera lastogam. Not yes or nam. And I thought it was kind of silly to be parrying the prayer if you didn't even know what you were saying. So, I think about things. Yeah. Okay. What else?
Do you have a question?
Well, I was going to say, I'd love to hear you talk about something. So, Mom, one of the things that I think of as one of your great gifts and something that is very important to you that I have learned is hospitality. And I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I learned that from my mom. Simple. By the time I was at college, we had a swimming pool in ground in New Jersey. My mom had gotten some money from an injury. And my dad my father was a very excellent athlete and fancy diving, gymnastics, that kind of thing, track. And so we had this swimming pool. And I think I learned hospitality there in that our relatives from Brooklyn, hot, sticky Brooklyn, would come up on the train, and then we'd pick them up, and they'd come to our house, and they brought with some foodstuffs, and all my mom did was provide the beverage, and learned that it can be very simple. It doesn't need to be. In fact, sometimes, John would think I should, even now I have to say, John, I can't have them for a meal, but we can do hot fudge sundaes. And just make it simple. And my mom had also taught me fancy napkins and candles. And you can get by with a lot. And I learned about potlucks in Minnesota. We didn't do that in New York. But John loves potlucks, and we use that. Because when he was in the ministry, oh yeah, you asked me about day-to-day stuff. Friday night, we usually always had our own family and pizza. Mm-hmm. Pizza at Godfather's was a long-standing. In fact, Becky, our kindergarten at the time, had a horrible day in kindergarten. And she came home and she was all sad. And I said, Becky, what's the matter? And she didn't tell me, but she said, well, at least it's Friday night and it's family night and we're going to have pizza. So, something she could depend on.
Yes, a safe space that she knew she could just be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So important.
And, but anyway, I learned from there, and I usually make things pretty simple. And we have less now that I'm not moving so much. It really hurts for me to stand still. But we did have Daniel and his family over yesterday, Deborah. He's our associate pastor at the little church John serves now.
Okay.
But he's like a year older than our son. They were best friends. But here he is. He's got his doctorate and 8 children. Mm. Yeah. But anyway, we just had simple. I had Oreo ice cream dessert. And I had been given we have a great neighborhood. They just had given me treats. And that was it, So, yeah, simple is good.
I would love to know, this is taking things a little deeper in a way, less of a story, more of a feeling. If you just close your eyes, if you're connecting with God one-on-one, just you, what does that feel like? What does that feel? What do you feel?
Well, and it might not be feelings. It might be, I try to read in the morning. I read a psalm every day and a proverb every day. There's 31. So, I know what day of the week we're on with the proverbs. And just kind of meditate. And then I'm reading through the New Testament again. And I just read it. My husband's plan is very different than mine. He's done the same thing for years. And I will read as much as I want to, not stop after 3 chapters until I really feel like, okay, this is good. And sometimes I'll have direct messages, the one in Proverbs, keep your mouth shut and you'll stay out of trouble. There are so many on the tongue, and I need that. I have to pray God put a guard over my tongue that I don't say stupid stuff. But yeah, so sometimes there is a feeling, but oftentimes there isn't. But it is when I'm usually in crisis that, you feel the most connected, Otherwise, you just like eating a meal. Sometimes you just eat it because you need the food. Other times you love it and you just thoroughly enjoy it and can spend time. But
is there a place that you feel closest to God?
Well, I always sit in our family room in the same spot, and I have down here my Bible and a notebook and, another book I'm reading and a calendar. And often, as I'm praying in the morning, I'll get ideas of who to. Now I don't do as much hospitality, although I could, but I think my John, he's older. And he's a little more tired I love to reach out to people, but he's a little bit more content with just friends. And, but I will think, I should call Donna and ask her how her granddaughter is, or I'll just jot down things, on this little thing here. And just feel like God is directing me. And some days you don't feel very much, but other days you think, I call them I spies. When you see God in action, an answered prayer or timing, special timing about something, I consider this an I spy. Who's going to sit down and listen to my story? Yeah. Debbie asks the most questions, but, others might not. Yeah. So does that answer?
It does.
When you asked about your daily routine as a pastor's wife, yeah. And I said in a bigger church, I really wasn't expected to do much. And I didn't. When my kids were in Sunday school, I didn't go to Sunday school because I needed that time, And also, we pretty much had my parents for dinner every Sunday. And they had semi-retired in Fergus Falls from New Jersey.
Grandma and Buddy were at our house for dinner pretty much every day.
No, not
they lived like 2 blocks away.
Not for dinner. They were there every day.
So you were taking care of us.
Yeah.
At the same time as your parents. So
there was some
definitely
a caregiver.
There were definitely some hard times. And my father, he was an alcoholic, but he was delivered miraculously in a conference that he had been to, but he still had some characteristics of a dry drunk. Yeah, he would make me, I don't get angry easily. I get jealous. I am prideful, but anger just isn't my thing, but he would bring out my anger. The one time, we had him for dinner, and oh man, Debbie had on too much mascara. And he
still true. It was true then, and it's still true now. So
he stormed.
Beautiful.
He stormed out of our house.
Because of the too much mascara?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like Debbie was the most going to the hospital back and forth when my mom was there. She was the one that would be going and giving and doing that. And here Dad and another time she had playing cards, and that just, he just lost it. But at the same time, he knew he was a sinner and saved by grace. And he would tell people, when he died, he was in a nursing home in Fergus Falls. And I was teaching in Battle Lake counseling in Battle Lake, 20 minutes from Fergus Falls. So, but every night on my way back, I'd stop at the nursing home, and spend a half an hour or whatever with him. Except for one night, because I was the representative at the school board meeting. And so I didn't get home until 7:30. So I stopped in and the gal said, no, we already tucked him into bed. Well, I get home and then I get a call from the nursing home saying, your father's gone. And I thought, where'd he go? Well, he had died. And, he was dead probably when I stopped there. And they just realized it. But then the next day, the nurse's aide was with him when he went to bed. And she said he lifted his hand and said, "I see the Father. He's waiting for me." And I just thought, wow, that was cool. Because, yeah, he could really, but we have more buddy stories. That's what the kids called him then. My mother was just sweet and nice. So there aren't many stories about her, really. And in and out of the hospital. But my dad, there's a lot of buddy stories. Yeah.
As you think over the course of your life, is there someone that comes to mind who has had an impact on you, a really lasting impact on you?
Yes. Well, back to my early years, 6th grade again, we were to this ALC Lutheran church. And my Sunday school teacher, Carol Sherb, Mrs. Sherb, she invited us to her home. So that was my real first experience with hospitality, because otherwise we just went to relatives, but this was going into somebody else's home. And that was significant for me. And the other one was a gal in the choir. Everybody else, after the service, they march out in their choir robes and they go get changed. Well, not Jeanette Erickson. She would stand in the back and greet you by name. And that made an enormous influence on me, the importance of knowing somebody's name. Because I was 7th grade, braces, awkward. I just wanted to rush to the car, and those two women. But then my husband has to be major. I learned so much from John because I had a desire to be in the Word, but I really didn't have the instruction. So I was under his preaching, and he's been the greatest. And then I did a lot of Beth Moore Bible studies, which were very influential in me too. Yeah. So, but those I think would be the people.
With hospitality, why do you find it important?
I like people. I don't consider myself an extrovert like John. I'm more of an ambivert. And but I really enjoy people, and that 3rd grade, being included, being left out. I'm an includer. I like circles. I like to be able to see everybody. I don't want people to feel left out, and that all came as a result of 3rd grade, I am sure. Yeah. And my word is to parents. So if your kid is going through a hard time, help them to realize that, okay, maybe my parents didn't pray with me at the time. I would probably do that with my own kids. I don't know if I did or not, but I would now, let's pray about it and talk to Jesus about it. But, yeah, I don't even know what I was trying to say there. But,
well, I was asking you about hospitality.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to inclusiveness for you, it sounds
but
like,
see,
and making people feel good, which even ties back to your work. It sounds like you're being a school counselor and making sure people feel heard and welcomed.
Right. Yes.
It all comes together.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you could go back and tell your younger self something, what would you say?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Trust God. During my younger years, I really didn't. He was still shining through me, I guess. I have I think back and I think, how in the world did I get to be homecoming queen at Concordia College? That just baffles me, And so even though I wasn't really walking close with him, he was still coming through. But I would just think, trust him more. Yeah. That whole, incident with being engaged, that should never have happened. But I wasn't walking closely with God then. I really wasn't. I mean, I wasn't seeking him like I do now. So, but it's nice to be older and have hindsight. But then you got to zip your mouth and not say too much to your children. Yeah.
So I know you have, 3 grandchildren? Do you have more? How many grandchildren do you have?
Oh, yeah, 9.
9 grandchildren.
Yeah. So
And what's
Debbie
it-
has Solveig. Our oldest is Andrew. He's a junior in high school. Nice kid. Becky's been divorced couple times, but Andrew is great. And yeah, she's had him at Park Christian in Moorhead since preschool and really sacrificed, you know. She paid the whole way. I don't think her ex at the time was paying anything. So he is a junior in high school. And then we jump to Solveig, who is 6, and Soren, who is 4. And now John and Anna have these adorable little girls. Willow is 3.
3, yeah.
And Winter just turned 2. Yeah. And Christy. Christy had a bad marriage. And we did not know that Brian was, outwardly, he was the life of the party. And we did not know that he treated her differently than he treated everybody else. So she has gotten married to Andy, and they have 4 boys. So she is a stepmom. And we finally met them last summer. They'd only been married 2-3 years. And we met them last summer, and that was really fun.
What do you like about being a grandparent?
Oh, I wish I lived here, you know. Sylvia and Soren have Jake's parents and family all the time. And I would love to. And then now, too, I would love to be playing with them more. You know, I can't. You know, playing ball and going to the park.
Reading books with them.
I love reading books. And I just wish I could see them more than I do. So it's nice when Debbie Zooms and whatever. Willow and Winter, that's only 2 hours away. And they are both working hard. So we've gotten up there a little bit more. And, you know, Anna works when Johnny's home and, you know, so, and, you know, her mother is good. Now, she, you know, her, like I said, her growing up years were bad, but she has really reconciled with it. She left home at 16. She has really reconciled with everybody. It's beautiful to see her spirit of forgiveness, you know, and Johnny encourages us a lot. He sends me Bible verses during the day, you know, and different things. So I love being a grandparent, and I really do like, right now, I don't really function till about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I've just learned to really cherish quiet time. And I don't need to be so busy. We were blessed being in Fergus Falls. We have many, many friends. And in fact, for the most fun thing I do each year is to buy poinsettias. They used to be $1 on Black Friday. Well, now they've raised them to $2.
Ah.
But this year I gave away 60. I can't believe it. And I thought, wow, God, I guess I'm really thankful. I have so many friends. You know, I gave a bunch to the widows at church and neighbors and, you know, friends and people that just stop by. And that's just a fun thing.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you.
Yes.
My first one is that when your friends and family think of you, what do you hope comes to mind?
I don't know, that I'm nice, that I'm kind. I would like them to think I'm kind. Yeah. I'm sure, you know, they think other things, but I think, and that I'm honest. You know, like if I don't like something, if I'm asked, sometimes I say it even when I'm not asked. But yeah, that my faith comes through. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you like to say to your family and your friends so that they always know how you feel about them?
Well, another thing that goes back to what I would like the family to think about me. I love the word integrity. That was a word in character education. And it just kind of, I love that word. You know, will you do the right thing when nobody else is looking? You know, kind of, I didn't talk that about my jobs. when I was in college, I worked in New York City and worked at an advertising agency there. And that was a real eye-opener to me. But I would go in on the train or the bus and into hot, sticky New York and come home and swim in the pool. And anyway, I just wanted to say I would hope that they would think that I had integrity, that I was honest and had faith. And I don't know. I think my friends know I love them. Just by the way, I mean, I love to give gifts. Like on the way here, I wanted to get a couple of those fancy breads from Clearwater. They have really good bread there. And I got 6 loaves. And John said, "What are you doing? What are you going to do with all those?" And I said, "John, I love to give gifts." So we stopped at Julie's. I gave her one. I gave one to Debbie. A couple of other people, and yeah.
That's one of the ways you show love.
I think so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's say your grandchildren are listening to this.
Yes.
20 years from now.
Yeah.
What do you want them to hear? What do you want them to know about your wishes or hopes?
My hopes for each of them would be that they would know how much Jesus loves them and that they would desire to follow him. And that would be my greatest hope for each of my children and grandchildren, to know that Jesus will never fail you or forsake you. Hence, that's the old Revised Standard Version, confidently say, "The Lord is my helper. What can man do to me?" Yeah, that God is faithful through the good and the bad.